I'm Grindhead Jim, and I can't do this anymore. The way I've been doing content for the last 3 years or so is just not sustainable, and it hasn't been for a long time. Let me explain myself. I've been doing content creation of some sort since late 2006, so I've been at this quite a long time, and I've gone through various iterations, and I've done content on everything from playing music, writing music, to reviewing video games, live streaming video games, reviewing movies, talking about other people's movies, how to make them, doing tech support for people that do this kind of content, to going into then later toys and all the related content with that, collections, video game reviews, and curation techniques. I've been all over the place. And I've tended to focus on more or less one thing at a time with a few outliers along the way. I have done pretty much a little bit of everything I just described. Sometimes to great effect, sometimes to not as great effect, but always trying to see what aspect of what I'm passionate about tends to make good content. At what one would argue is the height of my content creation success, I was live streaming over on Twitch with video gameplay and or podcasting, and those shows, if they were not a just full-blown interview podcast, would always start with a half hour to even up to 2 hours of discussion with the community about whatever was on my mind at the time. Nothing was really off limits, although I did tend to keep it away from anything political beyond some basic points of view on a specific policy. So in other words, I would never talk specifically about Republicans, Democrats, or Libertarians. If something came up in the news, I would just talk about whatever that issue was and where I stood on that without making any political statements regarding as to which party's doing what for the most part. I wouldn't really talk about religion, but I would talk about philosophical things. Beyond that, it was pretty much everything's on the table. This went on for more than a couple of years. It was a format that was, in my mind's eye, very sustainable because I could talk about anything. And when I ran out of things to talk about, we would flip on the gameplay and I'd play for the rest of the stream, and I would do that 3 to 6 days a week. And it did work to a degree, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun. But I also know that that was many years ago. That was pre-pandemic, and life is different for me now. You know, why am I coming to a decision where I can't do things the way I've been doing them? It's very simple. One of my longest ambitions, since most of you have known me as coming into the toy realm, has come to fruition. We're living in a nice place. I have a family again. I'm married. We've got responsibilities. And along with that, many, if not most of you know that I lost my job, or I was informed I was losing my job in December of last year, became official this year. And when the reality of that sets in, it's pretty scary. Now, granted, we're stable, we're okay, we've got plans. Don't worry about that. And that isn't really weighing in on the decision to change direction and where things are going, so much as the time to think has made me consider, okay, if I'm making big changes in my daytime career and we're looking at maintaining a certain lifestyle as a family or whatever, content creation has to factor into that somehow, right? So where I'm at now is, okay, if I have to make these big changes, let's look at everything and see what works. I've been doing Toy Grinds Live, also known as TGL, almost since the very beginning of the toy iteration of this channel. It was kind of an offshoot of what I'd been doing on Twitch with the hour-long discussions about whatever. But it's very toy and collection centric, which isn't a bad thing. But when you're doing that for almost 3 years straight, and you're doing it virtually every week, even every 2 weeks, it does get a bit thin when it comes to what you're going to talk about. On top of that, when you look at all of the different video types that are out there for toy collection and collection in general, they fall into some pretty well-defined slots. I got this, I'm going to take it out of the package and unboxing. Or a full-blown toy review, toy repair, talking about a toy line from the past in its entirety, things of that nature. And yes, there's a lot of great channels that do this. A lot that really do well. And I would venture to say that at least half of the standalone videos that I've put out are up to a par that I was very happy with at the time. But looking back on them, I was like, I could have done this differently, I could have done that differently, I could have talked about this. You know how it is, you're your own worst critic. Before I go any further, I want to be absolutely clear. I am not stopping making content. I am not stopping collecting anything that I collect. I'm not stopping being me. I'm not stopping being me, and part of being me means sharing my thoughts and views with people. It's a passion of mine. That's why I've been doing this type of thing for so long. But what I found when I really looked objectively at the last, 15, 18 years of history of making videos and content for consumption, one thing is clear. I hyper-focus way too much on specific things when I am a completely whole person that I think most people, if they have interest in talking to me or gaining insight from what I have to say, even if it's just entertainment, it's because I do have such a wide range of things that I'm into and passionate about. And I have a knowledge base and experience base that not everyone has. And where my knowledge base crosses over with somebody else, my experience takes over to give me a unique perspective, and vice versa. And I haven't been taking advantage of that. So now, what is going forward going to be the direction of this channel? Pretty simple. It's whatever I want to talk about. Period. I'm not putting any limits on it beyond the religion and politics thing, because I don't want to alienate anybody, because those are your personal beliefs. They're your right to have those. I don't need that on this channel. But everything else is pretty much fair game. Any of the stuff that I've talked about in the past, anything you know about me, I'm probably going to have something to talk about at some point. But what that means in terms of content is going to be a bit chaotic at first. So first and foremost, I am no longer going to be announcing projects before they're released until they're done. So until that video is fully edited and ready to go, you're not going to hear about it. I'm not going to have set days to release videos. They go up when they're done. And that's going to be that. For patrons and so forth, definitely still going to give you guys early access to a bunch of stuff, especially in this early stage of this idea, just to kind of get some feedback on what's working versus what isn't. As far as live streaming goes, I'm still going to keep the every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time format. It's still going to be called TGL. But in my head, TGL will no longer stand for Toy Grinds Live. It'll stand for The Grind Live. And it will still heavily feature toys, but I'll also have little tidbits of whether it be music news or film news or collections of other things. It's going to evolve. And some of the shows are going to be a bit more philosophical and thought-provoking, because there's only so many different ways to say, hey, this pre-order's up, how do you feel about that? I really feel like the heavier we lean into talking to each other holistically as human beings about the human condition without getting too Eastern philosophy kind of a thing, I think the more we have to say. Because I'm in my mid-40s now. I'm middle-aged by all accounts. And, these things are things we're going to talk about. Yes, we collect toys, we play with our toys and our video games and our books and our films and music to escape from certain things. Don't worry, this is not going to become some depressing show about, well, it's the second half of my life, now what do I do? That's not what I mean. I want to explore and enrich your human experience as we mature and find ways that these things that we love, these colorful pieces of plastic that we surround ourselves with, how they tap in keeping us young. Things like that. And just explore things along the way. Because let's face it, when I'm just talking about the industry and the pre-orders and sales and all these things, which will always be a part of the channel. But when I focus on that stuff, it starts to get more cynical than it needs to be for my taste, okay? There's plenty to be cynical about with the business practices that are out there for toy companies, record companies, film studios, you name it. And I'm not going to lie to you and say we'll never touch on that stuff again. But what I will say is that I want to look at things more as a whole. Another reason why this decision is being made is that the fact there are so many channels out there doing things, and there's a very specific template for each type of content, whether you're talking about music collection, film collection, toy collection, live gaming streams, podcasts, you name it. If you take a look at any one of these types of videos, the toy reviews, repair, whatever, there's a gold standard for all of this stuff. And I am just done comparing myself to anyone else in the sphere. Because the reason those people are successful, in my opinion, is that they found what they enjoy doing in their process. They honed it, they crafted it, and then they're off to the races. And arguably the most successful among us that do these types of things are also the most self-critical. So I decided to be a little self-critical, look myself in the mirror and say, what do I want to do? So sometimes a video is going to be just like this. Me talking to a camera, and that's it. Other times you're going to have a higher production value of, whatever I'm talking about against a blue or a green screen, close-ups, different clips of performances or film clips, what have you. There's plenty of things I want to do with content that I'm just not doing, and I'm sick of being paralyzed by what I perceive to be meeting expectations of you guys. One thing that I've learned, and I had to really stop and admit to myself, is that I'm not the best at what I do, except I'm the best at presenting my perspective on things. The reason most of you stick around, I would presume, is because you get to hear from me. If someone else did some of the videos that I did, they probably wouldn't be as interesting to you. That's not an ego trip. That simply means that I do bring something to the table. So I'm leaning into me. I'm leaning into my perspective because it has worked for me in the past, and I'm taking the blinders off and I'm moving forward. So to recap, I'm not quitting anything, but I had a come to Godzilla moment and said, okay, I have to really just wipe the slate clean as I kind of start this next chapter of life, and I want to give this a go, just doing exactly what I want when I want to do it. So you're going to see lots of different videos on lots of different subjects. Some will be this vlog style, some will be more produced. The live shows will continue on Mondays, albeit with a slight and nearly imperceptible name change. And we're going to expand what we're talking about as we move forward. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's ever supported this channel during any of its iterations, but especially all of my Patreon members and YouTube members, because your direct support, feedback, and friendship, whether you realize it or not, has led me to this place. Because all of you showed me that it didn't matter what I did, it's how I did it. And that you guys appreciate me for who I am rather than aspire to who I could be. So with that said, I know you came here today looking for a new live show of Toy Grinds Live, but what you got was an extended preview of what TGL and the rest of this channel are going to be in the future. I really hope that you'll stick with it. I hope that this will bring more enrichment to your viewing, and that maybe our friendships and camaraderie and our bonds will only get stronger. Thank you for watching for as long as you have. If you never watch again, that's okay. But if you continue to watch, we bring along a friend. Let's give them something new. Let's take care. We'll talk soon. Special thanks to our patrons and members who you're seeing on the screen now. Thank you so much for your support. It really helps.